Oh, great. Here
Tuesday all day, Wednesday all day, and until like night, and then Thursday, literally the whole entire day, no work at all for me. I said, Joe, which day works best for you? And he said Thursday. So I figured, perfect, Thursday we can recap the NFL draft, Mayweather, Pacquiao, NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, the Kentucky Derby, considering Joe wrote about it for his own company. And I said, Joe, come over, we'll do the podcast. And he says, nope, sorry, I'm in the city. So that is why we've been delayed on this podcast, because of my great co-host scheduling ability. But it is Mother's Day. It is May 10th, Sunday afternoon. We're outside, first edition of Swishing podcast outside. And we finally got together to recap the entire month of May, which has been spectacular. I know everyone knows May 2nd was the biggest day in sports, probably in my lifetime. And so now we finally have a chance to do that. So it is the edition of Swishing podcast with Ed and Joe. Joe and Ed, we're outside now. Joe, you want to defend yourself quick?
Yeah. First of all, it's gorgeous out. It's 81 degrees. It's beautiful. Second of all, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, including mine and Miss Michelle, lovely Michelle inside. Third of all, I wanted to say happy birthday to my co-host. It was his birthday yesterday.
Thank you.
23 years young. Hasn't aged a day. Looks great. Great bod, great everything. So happy birthday.
now you're sucking up.
I'm buttering you up. Absolutely.
Because you want to. So I stop bashing you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Don't feel bad. It's we're here. We're doing it. So yeah, a lot went on. I'm not sure where you want to even start with all the stuff going on right now. We're in the midst of Big Mike Pineda with 16 strikeouts and 7 innings, looking great for the Yankees. We have the Yankees streak to talk about. The Mets slumber to talk about. We have the Rangers still hanging by a thread. And a game later on today at 7:00 versus the Caps. Game 6, down 3-2 after a big win. 2 days ago, sorry. Late game heroics. Still can't get pucks by Holtby, but they've managed to get 2 by Chris Kreider and Captain Ryan McDonough. NFL draft, some bad injury news. We have a big time, possibly the biggest undrafted free agent signing in NFL history we got to look at. Jets got a guy who was thought to be the best player in the draft, slide to them at number 6. Everyone seems to be happy with both the Jets and Giants drafts. So we'll get to big picks we liked and picks we don't like. Kentucky Derby, the best horse won. Joe is a big horse guy. He'll talk some more about that. Maybe preview the Preakness a little bit. Right. We'll do we'll recap the Mayweather Pacquiao. I mean, I know we're a couple days late on that, but this is probably the biggest, flop.
I think we should start
in history. So we're going to start there right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that fight, what was it? Saturday night fight. I bought the pay-per-view. We're all here. Joe watching in my house. We got a big crowd. I'm a big boxing guy. I watched the fight the week before the heavyweight fight between Klitschko and Jennings. I actually met Shannon Briggs earlier that day, who was a big time heavyweight fighter in the mid 2000s. I mean, sorry, he mid 90s up until the early 2000s. He did had a couple big fights with Lennox Lewis and guys like that. So I like boxing. I know boxing is a dying sport. A lot of people now like the MMA and UFC garbage. I'm not a big fan of that. I think I get freaked out when you don't have shoes on and you're kicking guys. It kind of grosses me. I don't like that. I don't like that whole concept. If people like it, great. I know it matters now, but the fact of the matter is, no UFC fight could even come close to the amount of buzz that Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao had. It's just not even a contest, really. You have. I mean, even with guys like Brock Lesnar or CM Punk, who were big WWE guys, they're not going to be able to bring a draw that big. So this fight was 5-6 years in the making. It finally happened. The expected thing happened, which was Floyd dances around the ring and he tires Manny Pacquiao out. Manny Pacquiao, doesn't really land any meaningful punches, which he didn't at all. And maybe besides the one where it seemed to swell up Floyd's eye. And Manny did win a few rounds, but it was still unanimous decision. Floyd Mayweather wins the fight. He is now 48-0. I believe he has a fight scheduled sometime in the fall to go 49-0. Then he wants to retire. Then I don't know why he doesn't want to go for 50. Everyone on Earth seemingly thinks that it was the most boring fight, waste of money. There's class action suits to stop this fight. To get money back for the fight being miserable. I personally didn't have a problem with the fight because I've seen plenty of Floyd fights before, and I know that's how he fights. I know it's his style. And to me, a defensive style where you could duck that many punches and make someone throw punches that are useless, to me, that's an art in itself. It's not fighting, it's boxing. It's part of the sport. It's scored that way. You can't fault him for that. I felt like we saw a lot of people who watched a Floyd fight for the first time really not really grasped that's what he does, and they were expecting other things. There's no knockouts. I mean, I think he has 20-something knockouts in his 49 fights, 48 fights that he has. That's just not his forte. So if you're expecting that, I mean, that's simply your fault. That's how I felt about it. I thought it was really an art. It was masterful of how he fought, how he used the ropes. I mean, anyone gets the back against the ropes, you always say they're done. He used it to his advantage and slides out. It's just incredible. If you really watch the fight again, see all his mechanics, just the way his footwork was. When he countered Manny on a couple punches, and just to win those rounds, I thought personally it was good. I know that I'm in the very, very, very slim minority, so it doesn't really matter what I say. People are already making fun of the fact that there could be a rematch. I would still watch it. I'm going to still want to watch Floyd's next fight. That being said, I do agree that Manny is way past his prime. The fight, if it was 5-6 years ago, would have been more competitive. The same result. It would have been the same result, but it would have been more competitive because Manny's just not what he was. He does have the slight shoulder. It was a labrum tear, I think, a rotator cuff tear. So, that was the whole issue with him filling out the health report card before the fight, and he wanted to take that shot of that the muscle, not a muscle relaxer, but I don't know what, I forgot the name of it. Slipped my mind, but before the fight, anyway. So there's a lot of issues with it, but the crux of it was the whole social media reaction. Everyone's on TV saying, awful, terrible fight. I don't even know what you even think about it, because I know you
agree a lot on Floyd.
Yeah,
a lot.
Well, I knew you thought Floyd was going to kick his butt.
I don't think we disagree on anything, actually. Right. Personally speaking, I think Floyd is probably one of the best tactical boxers in history.
Has to be, yeah.
Yeah. The only thing is, it's like when it comes to boxing, long gone are the days of like Rocky Marciano and all of these like heavyweights. It's not a heavyweight sport anymore, because the heavyweights, they're always looking to play football. They're looking to play basketball. They're looking to go into mixed martial arts. They're looking to do a lot of this other stuff. So if you wanted a heavyweight fight that was guaranteed to be at least some kind of slugfest, you should have ordered the Klitschko fight a week before at Madison Square Garden.
That was on HBO. It was free.
Right. So at that point, that's what people wanted to watch. And for us personally, we knew what to expect. And we had the same expectations for the fight. Mm-hmm. We have the same opinion of the fight. I completely agree. I thought the fight was pretty good. And granted, it was 5 to 6 years in the making. The fight should have happened 5 to 6 years ago. But I do agree with you in the sense that I think it would have been the same result years ago, because not only would have Manny been in his prime, but Floyd was still in his prime back then too. And he was even better 5 to 6 years ago than he was last night. And when you look at Pacquiao, the distinct difference between the two fighters is that Pacquiao basically looked worn out in comparison to Mayweather.
Whether he was injured or not, he was worn out 100%.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the injury may have a slight factor to it, but it doesn't tell the entire story of why Mayweather was the superior fighter. When you look at Pacquiao and his track record, you look at the series he had with Marquez before they scheduled for the Mayweather fight.
Right.
He lost to Marquez twice before in 4 fights, and he got knocked down on one of those occasions. And for me, when he got
his face,
right,
it was disgusting to watch that.
When he got knocked out in the 4th round by Juan Marquez, that to me was like the end of for me personally. I mean, everybody wants to see Mayweather versus Pacquiao because Pacquiao is like the big name from this era.
They're the two biggest fighters in our generation.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Easily last decade or so for us.
Right.
I mean, we were kind of young for the Tyson, for the Holyfield, for the Lennox Lewis, for the guys like that, where the heavyweights were king, and that's what America wants. And I'll get into that in a second. I'll let you finish your point. But 100% for our generation, right. Many Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather are the two biggest names. Coming right after, I guess, the Hopkins and the Roy Jones Juniors and guys like that, who are a little bit earlier.
Also forget Sugar Ray Leonard.
Sugar Ray Leonard also, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we have very, very similar opinions of how we evaluated and what we thought of the Mayweather versus Pacquiao fight. Believe it or not, I expected Mayweather to completely dominate the fight, and coming from the standpoint where I'm a big time Mayweather fan. I appreciate his style. I love his style. I think he's an incredible boxer, and I mean boxer in the strict sense of the word. He boxes. He doesn't fight. He doesn't get into a slugfest with his opponents. He looks to land his punches, and he does so at a 50% success rate, which always gets marginalized. But he hits half his punches, and half of those punches are always pretty solid power punches. So the notion that he doesn't, really fight, or if he that's wrong. It's 100% wrong, and that's just people being biased because they don't like Mayweather the person. And to be fair, he's
the worst person.
He is the worst.
But that's a good point too. I wanted to say that. Just because we're talking about his boxing and saying we love his boxing does not mean we condone what he does out of the ring or in his private life. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this is strictly boxing. We're not going to sit here and bash him because everyone else in the world bashed him. ESPN can bash him. Everyone but Stephen A. Smith seemingly wanted to bash him. What he did with the whole Michelle Beadle, Rachel Nichols thing, obviously, as people who are in the media, me and Joe disagree with that. We don't agree with anything he's done. You're discussing if you hit a woman and just his attitude towards women. It's awful. That's not what we're talking about. We're not going to sit here and bash him because that's just too easy. We're talking about strictly the fight because that is what matters to us. We're doing a sports podcast, not a social opinion podcast. So anyway, thanks for bringing that up. The thing that I want to say is as a person who likes boxing, obviously you like boxing too. America craves the heavyweight. We crave an American heavyweight. That's what we crave.
That's what we're missing.
Vladimir Klitschko, great fighter. He's a Russian guy. No one in America cares. That's just what it comes down to. No one watched the fight. No one even knew probably there was a Madison Square Garden was holding the heavyweight fight. On HBO the week before Mayweather Pacquiao. No one even watched that. I think I know two other people who mentioned the fight. I think it was like Goose, and I forgot who else it was. Maybe the guys at work. Someone mentioned the fight. No one else knows. Okay, so I watched it. I think that America, in a sense, is right. Is the heavyweight fight more appealing? Yeah, because at any second you could see, a knockout. How many times did Mike Tyson fight in a minute, 40 seconds, crush a guy, hit him, catch him with the right, and the guy's out cold? That people loved. I mean, think about the 90s. Think about how boxers were the big names. Think about that. How many people went to Atlantic City, Las Vegas, wherever, for all those big fights to see? Like I said, mentioned all those names before, to see Holyfield and Tyson and Lennox Lewis coming over from. Those are the big fights everyone knows. But those are these big time boxers. I mean, there were bigger even the other weight classes. Even guys like Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, you mentioned Sugar Ray Leonard. It was the whole boxing. While it's not one of the four major sports, it was something that people. It was a must-see event. And frankly, Mayweather Pacquiao was a must-see event too because they're the two biggest names. But like we said, the fight in terms of the ability of Pacquiao was probably 6 years too late, even without his injury. So I thought it was very not rewarding because I also feel that Mayweather does not maybe fight the best boxers in their prime, but to see him do his style and to beat a guy who people considered one of the best of our generation was very impressive. I kind of hope he goes undefeated. I think he needs to if he wants to be considered one of the better ones. Because a lot of people don't consider him a top 15, top 10 boxer. He's not on the Mount Rushmore of boxers. He's not considered one of the best pound for pound boxers because of his style, which is not really loved amongst boxers. Even you had guys like Tyson and other people tweet about it. During I think like Teddy Atlas was on ESPN. They were trashing and no one really considers him a top boxer because of that, and because of his inability to pick guys. He picks and chooses the fighters he knows he'll beat at the time he knows he'll beat them.
His track record speaks for itself.
But then again, he is undefeated, and so I hope if he wants to be considered one of the better boxers of all time, he has to beat everyone he faces in the ring. So for that, it's fun to see a guy go undefeated in his career. It's fun to grow up watching a boxer dominate anyone he boxes. I mean, he's had one or two close fights I could think of off the top of my head. Besides that, he's rolled through everything. So I guess in closing of this, because me and you do agree, there's no really debate here. Sorry for everyone who watched it. Sorry for everyone who paid the $100 to watch that on HD and gets screwed of an exciting fight. But if you went to that fight hoping for a knockout, you screwed up. I mean, it's your fault for not knowing boxing. It's your fault for expecting something other than what you're going to get. This is not, the Tyson Holyfield. This is not a Thrill of Manila. This is not the Rumble in the Jungle. This is not Ali Frazier. You're not going to get, I don't know what you were thinking you're going to get. This is not who was a Gotti Ward fight. This is no one. This is not one going to be the epic. It wasn't going to be an epic battle. It was going to be a very, like you said, tactical. Smartly, he was a very efficient boxer. They call him like a businessman because he just doesn't throw any extra punches. He does what he has to do. He's efficient and he moves on, and you can't blame for that. So we saw exactly what we thought would play out. Me and you were right. Everyone else on the planet Earth who paid, that was the pay-per-view broke records, and they were disappointed. So That's all there is to it. It was hyped from social media. It was hyped because it was 6 years too late, and the build-up made people go crazy, and that's what you got. You got a boxer who was over the hill, probably two, and in all honesty, probably two over-the-hill boxers. And you had one whose style beats, one guy throws a lot of punches, one guy throws very little punches, and, the one that everyone thought would win did win. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, my last comment is, if you bought it for the spectacle. You bought it
just to say you're a part of it,
right? You watch it because you want to watch the Super Bowl. You bought it because, like me, I bought WrestleMania. Like that's the same way I feel.
Which is probably way more entertaining than the boxing match.
Right, absolutely. I just had to throw that in there.
Early that day, 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
6:40. Tom Brady was one person who went from the Kentucky Derby to the fight. So he did the two big events of the day. I know you wrote something for Heavy.com, and you're a big horse guy. I mean, and all of our friends, me, myself included, are big horse guys. We've been to Belmont. We do watch the races. I know a little bit about this one. I know this was on a good betting race. I know a lot of the top end horses are very, very dominant, and you don't win any money on those. So the top horse was American Pharaoh. American Pharaoh won. It was a pretty exciting race at the end of the
day. No, it was a phenomenal race. Yeah. And I, like I said, I wrote something for Heavy.com for this, and I had extensive coverage throughout the week, and I'm going to have extensive coverage throughout the week for the Preakness coming up. But the best thing I could say about this year's Kentucky Derby is it was probably the strongest field in my lifetime since I've been born. And my uncle, he owns a couple horse races. My father grew up betting on horse racing, so he knows, and he's seen all the all-time great horses. He's seen Secretariat, he's seen Seattle Slew, he's seen Affirmed, he's seen horses like Deputy Minister, in his time. So my family, we come from an extensive background, but to put it in layman's terms for everyone who can understand here, the quality of horses in this year's Derby was unbelievable. And even the third, fourth, fifth best horses in the race, they would have been favorites to win the Derby in every other year. So it was like they put an all-star lineup out on the Derby field this year. So when I was doing my evaluation of Derby, there were about 6 or 7 horses that I really, really liked. But I thought American Pharaoh was going to win the race, because usually super horses like that, they end up winning. And Pharaoh is probably, he's been compared to the horses like Seattle Slew, and Seattle Slew was a tremendously strong horse. But to be honest, I watched the Derby, and the comparisons they're there. I think he's going to win the Preakness, and I think if he does win the Preakness, the Belmont's going to be the struggle, because he's going to be going from a mile and a quarter to a mile and a half, which is the Belmont Stakes, which is the longest race out there, and it is truthfully a marathon, and it is the ultimate test for horse racing. So I'm excited to see where American Pharaoh goes. But as I was doing my evaluation, not to toot my own horn here, but I wrote down 5 or 6 horses that I was using. I bet some horses to win. I used a couple horses in exactas and trifectas, and I didn't really win. I won. I had American Pharaoh to win, so I put $10 to win on him. Obviously, he didn't pay out much because he was the 3-1 favorite. But the horses that I was using ended up finishing in the top 6, and the horse that I really, really, really like, that went off 21-1, Danzig Moon, finished 5th in the race. So I used him in a couple of exactas, and if he would have come in the money, I would have hit the exactor, because I had 18-8. 8 was Dortmund, who was the second choice on the board. He was 4-1. He was trainer Bob Baffert's other horse, because he trained both American Pharaoh and Dortmund.
Right.
And there's right now some controversy
surrounding
each of those horses' owners, because Dortmund he's every bit as good. This situation reminds me a lot of Affirmed and Alliar in 1978, where they were clearly the 2 best horses, and they ended up running in all 3 races, and they finished 1-2 in all three races, which is absolutely absurd. It's unheard of, and it hasn't happened in almost 30 years. So, almost 40 years, actually.
Right.
Now. So, not that I disagree with it. Obviously, if you're Baffert, you run both horses because, you're doubling up your chances to win, because you're running the 2 best horses in the season. So, from a personal standpoint, I would like to see a lot of the horses that ran in the Derby come back, because I feel like this year's field is the strongest. But at the same time, last year I thought California Chrome was going to win, because I thought he was the strongest horse by far in the field. And sure enough, I was right. He was the strongest horse last year. He finished 2nd in the Breeders' Cup class, a classic to Bayern. So this year, I feel like American Pharaoh is definitively the best horse out there. And if you watch him run, like I saw him win like the Arkansas Derby before. The time figures, they line up. The pedigree lines up. He's trained by one of the 5 best trainers in the entire world. So it's going to be interesting, and the Preakness is going to be interesting. And I can't wait until Wednesday where they draw out the post positions.
Folks, you're not going to get a much better breakdown or horse race analysis than you will from, besides maybe Randy Moss, than Joe Calabrese. We're lucky to have him.
Take Randy Moss's job.
We're lucky to have him. For a lot of people who in the New York area who listen to us, obviously you hear Francesco once a day talk about the horse racing, and there was a lot of like Joe said, a lot of controversy between if Dortmund's going to run. Now, is he going to actually run Preakness, or is he pulling him?
He's going to run the Preakness. Right now, I believe they're running in the Preakness. I believe Firing Line might. Firing Line went off as a 10. He finished second in the race. He had the second or third best speed figures in the entire race. So I feel like they're going to try to run him back. I believe Danzig Moon is going to run again. Danzig Moon was the horse that I really liked, and believe it or not, Eddie Olchuk really liked him.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and Eddie
he's very good. Eddie O's very good with the horse.
He's very good with horse racing. Anybody who is a big hockey fan knows that Eddie O, who does the NBC
and the other guy is Boomer also I think hit the exacta box.
Right.
On
well, I mean the exacta was easy to hit.
Right. Yeah.
It was a
lot of the favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, all the top 5 choices on the board, which is why this race really lived up to its billing, because the top 4 horses in the race were 4 of the top 5.
Now, but do you think do you like the fact that Dortmund's running, or do you think it would hurt competition if he pulled him? Baffert, that is, if he pulled Dortmund, just so that Farrow could definitely has a clear shot of winning. Because how would you feel? How would you feel, say, if Dortmund beat Farrow? See if Farrow finished second in this race, right, and then maybe somehow pulled off the long run at Belmont. How would you feel?
It would feel really, really bittersweet. I'm all for the best competition, and personally speaking, I would like to see Dortmund run the race because Dortmund's an excellent horse, on his own, in his own right too. Mm-hmm. The smarter thing to do, obviously, and everybody would probably agree with this, is to not have Dortmund run in the Preakness,
right?
Because you're only hurting American Pharoah's chances,
right?
But that's not how it works,
exactly.
And both horses are owned by different stables. Now, if they were owned by the same stables, I think you could bet on it that they would have pulled Dortmund from the race because they understand how special American Pharoah is, and obviously they wouldn't want the super horse to get beaten. But it doesn't work like that, and I mean, I don't think Baffert really is complaining. I mean, he understands how special both of these horses are, and they're... You see, like I said, I'm all for the spirit of competition. I'm always for running the best horses in the race. And I think running the best horses in the race, it gives you the best Triple Crown season.
100%. Because the second you pull Dortmund and then American Pharoah wins, people are going to say...
And he wins by 8 lengths.
People are going to say it's going to be asterisk because you're saying he didn't run versus the best horses. They pulled him for that reason. And you want to win. The best has to beat the best.
Yes.
Do people want a Triple Crown more than anything? I think we do.
I know, absolutely. I think we need.
That being said, you want to see him beat the other best horses, even if it's owned by the same trainer. No, I'm with you on that. But yeah, the Derby was very, very exciting.
See, the Preakness is interesting because usually in a good Derby race, the speed figures are slow because the best horses usually have the best. What they call speed figures. That's obviously the timing of the race. The best horses usually have the best speed figures, so the best horses usually get to the lead, and then they slow the pace down. Whereas in Derby races that are much more open, you have wild card type of horses who get out to the lead, and they're fast horses, but they're horses that really can't stay on the lead, and they'll usually fade back. And the Derby race is considered by most a closer's race because of usually maybe not so the best horse, but usually a top horse does win the Derby. It's very rare that you'll see a 50-1 shot win the Derby, although it's happened in recent years. It happened in 2005 and it happened in 2009. So the Derby race is a closer's race, but the Preakness is really the race where the definitive the best horse always wins. And we've seen that in recent years. Like California Chrome won the Preakness last year very easily. We saw that in 2012 when I'll Have Another won the Preakness fairly easily, even though he didn't run the Belmont, which sucked that year.
We were there.
Yes, we were there. Wait, hold on. Was it 2013 or was it 2012? I forget. I gotta think about this for a second. I can't think off the top of my head.
I don't know.
We were there.
The day before they pulled him out, we went and we were there, and it was kind of like everyone.
No, we went in 2013 because 2013 Orb won the Derby, and then Oxbow won the Preakness, and then we were there, and Palace Malice won the Belmont because he ran and they took the blinkers off of him. I remember this. Yeah, we went in 2013.
I don't think so.
No, 2012.
No, we were there. We were there when the horse. We were there for a fact. We went. We were still 2 years in a row. We skipped the second year because they pulled the horse out earlier in time. But we had the tickets the year before when it was supposed to be somebody, and he got the slight injury. They didn't kill him, but they pulled him out like the day before, and so we were still there.
2012 was I'll Have Another, and they pulled him out of the Belmont. So he won the first two legs, and then he didn't run the
right.
Belmont. So I believe that's the one that we skipped. So I feel like we went in 2001.
We went. I know for a fact we went for a year. There was a guy.
The last time we went was 2013.
A triple crown was
last year.
Right. The Triple Crown runner was on the line, and we skipped that because. No, we went to the one year there was a Triple Crown on the line, and they pulled him the day before. They were unsure, and like the last minute they pulled him, and then that's the reason why, because there were so many like cameras and crews. It was packed. It was massive. Well, anyway, I'm throwing you off your point, but
right.
Yeah, so
it's fine. Yeah, but usually definitively, like the strong, like the top horses usually do win the Preakness. That's how it goes. So if you want a prediction from me, I predict American Pharoah is going to win the Preakness, and I think Dortmund's going to run well enough where Bafford's going to decide I want to run him in the Belmont. And then you'll see a couple of horses that ran the Derby run the Belmont again. That's usually how it goes. But this has really been a fun, exciting season because for the first time that I could remember, I've been following the races all the way from like January and February. Mm-hmm. So I've gotten to see all of these horses actually run multiple times, and the Derby for me was like, it was phenomenal because it lived up to my expectations, even though Pharoah won the race. It was a great race itself, and all the top horses were there. So it definitely lived up to the hype.
Yeah, a lot of lead changes late in that race, and then Pharoah pulled away just at the very end. Even at the end, you were unsure he was going to win.
He was Firing Line actually ran a great race. You know, Pharoah only won by a length,
right?
A little over a length. So we can't give a definitive Preakness prediction because we don't know all of the horses who are going to definitely run in the race.
Right.
Because we'll find that out
We'll touch on this more later.
But right now, American Pharoah is my Preakness pick. He's probably going to go off as, an even money favorite, if not like 1-2, 1-4.
Sure.
He's going to definitively the best. Dortmund will probably go off somewhere around 3-1, 7-2, and everybody else will probably be at least 7-1, 8-1, if not higher. So definitively, he'll be the definitive betting choice, but I think he's going to win the race because I think he's really that strong of a horse, and I think we may be looking in history. Although if you would have asked me last year, I would have said the same thing about California Chrome, but he ran fourth in the Belmont last year, so he may have not won the Triple Crown, but he didn't come too far from it either.
Right.
So he was a good horse in his own right. So
yeah, we'll touch more on the Preakness when they have the actual every horse set locked in. We'll get Joe's predictions.
Yeah, we'll do another podcast later in the week.
We'll get back on his schedule. Article he has out and stuff, so we'll get back to that. Also on that day, we're going to go back again. Back in time, Saturday, the May 2nd, because we were a little late in this podcast. The last day of the NFL draft was on throughout the whole day. A lot of buzz in New York. We enjoyed the mock draft. Our last podcast, I believe Joe had the Jets taking Shane Ray. Obviously, with the whole weed problem, he slid down.
Jinx that.
Still went to the first round. I said the Giants take an O-line. I said Brendan Sheriff, who went fifth to the Redskins, but I was still right. Giants took Eric Flowers, like a 6'6", 330-pound monster from Miami. I know a lot of good things written about him. Said that he never gave up a sack or took a holding penalty whole entire season, last college season, which is a great stat. I think it was by Gil Brandt, who actually works for SiriusXM as well on the NFL channel, tweeted that out. So that's a great stat from them. The Jets, however, outshined the Giants. The best player a lot of people had in the whole draft was Leonard Williams, the hybrid defensive tackle, defensive end. He's about, 6'3", 300 pounds. He could play the 3 gap, the 5 gap. A lot of comparisons to Richard Seymour.
Gerald McCoy, too.
Gerald McCoy, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he plays, in or out. So people saying, a generational type player. I think even somebody said Reggie White. So he's an incredible athlete, curl prospect.
Actually, is less athletic. Reggie White profiled more as like like a defensive end. Like he could play 3-4 defensive end, but like he could play 4-3 defensive end too.
Yeah.
Leonard Williams can't do that. He's definitely an inside player.
Yeah, he's more inside, but he could run. Yeah, so I mean, having a pass rush presence from the inside is incredible. Yeah, he's not a rusher off the edge, but he is a hybrid. He could do. He does a lot of things on the defensive line. Put it this
Having a
way.
defensive tackle who can collapse the pocket is tremendous.
So for the Jets, does it make the most sense to take that pick when you have two studs like Sheldon Richardson and Muhammad Wilkerson? Probably not, but when you have the chance of taking the best player on the board, you got to take him the way the draft worked out. Number one, not a surprise. Jameis Winston, 2, again, for the most part, without the trade rumors, not a surprise. Marcus Mariota or what did Goodell say? Mariotto or something to the Titans. Took him 2. No trades happened there. 3, I mocked the Amari Cooper selection by the Jaguars because of all the smokescreens they were putting up, and they took Dante Fowler Jr., who we'll get to in a moment, who had a gruesome injury. But they took him, no surprises there. 4, Cooper, Raiders, great pick for them. 5 was the first kind of shock.
You had Cooper to the Jaguars, so obviously he was going to be a top 4 pick.
Yeah. 5, Redskins took Brandon Sheriff, who most people have as transitioning to a guard, and he's an interior lineman, but a lot of people like him and think he's one of the safer players in this draft. And 6, the Jets, Leonard Williams, not supposed to be there. They got him. 7 was Kevin White to the Bears. 8 was Vic Beasley to Falcons, right? Giants. 9 took Flowers, and top 10, running out 10
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley was the top 10 pick, right? So there's our top 10. Sorry, I'm sneezing. We're outside now. The allergies kicking in. So I talk about the Giants pick. The Giants needed to keep Eli Evans, but I'm glad they went O-line. I was afraid they were not going to go O-line. I was afraid they were going to go for a receiver or running back, something they didn't need, and they took a guy who's just a monster of a human being who could be the blind side protection for Elijah, and I'm very happy with that. A lot of good things said about him. So there's no qualms with me with that pick. I like a guy who projects as more of a tackle anyway than Sheriff, who would play probably interior part of the line. So I'm totally fine with that pick. The Jets, though, taking Leonard Williams, and obviously I did the Giants pick because I'm a Giants fan, just because he's a Jets fan. But let's not forget, I did have Jets season tickets for a while before the new stadium, before I went for school and such. So I have no ill will towards the Jets. In fact, you could say, as long as the Jets are not playing the Giants, I'm a very big Jets fan. And I think getting a guy like Leonard Williams and having a 3-man line, if they do use a 3-4, which they will under Bowles, having Sheldon Richardson, Muhammad Wilkerson, and Leonard Williams is just absurd. The Giants won this Super Bowl as a 4-3 defensive front with pure pass rushing just from the line itself, without having to blitz. That was the key. If the Jets, the Jets were a blitzing team with Rex. Obviously, everyone knows that. If you can somehow create pressure with those 3 guys without sending your linebackers and creating havoc from that, and having more people cover receivers, tight ends, receivers crossing, backs coming out of the backfield, that makes your defense a whole heck of a lot different, especially the fact that you have a defensive backfield with Reeves, with Cromartie. They signed so they're loaded back there. Hopefully, Daniel back if
go back from injury.
Right,
so one of them
did take Calvin Pryor as well in the first round. So there's players there. That alone, if you could somehow get pressure from those 3 guys who are all, probably, Pro Bowlers, there will be. I'm not sure. Was Richardson a Pro Bowler? I don't know if Sheldon Richardson. Has he been a Pro Bowler yet? I know Wilkerson has been.
Yeah, I don't think he was last year.
Well, these guys they're all pros. They're unbelievable players, and I think if you can take a player to add in there and have Leonard Williams might be the best one. I mean, apparently he might have the highest ceiling, which is scary to think about. And if you get pressure from just those 3 guys alone, I mean, yes, the Jets don't have a quarterback. I know, that's number one concern. We'll see what Fitzpatrick can do. A lot of people are now saying, Geno has weapons. I'm not sure if I'm going to be sold or buy into that. And we don't have to break down the whole Geno Smith quarterback issue. We'll keep it strictly draft, strictly Leonard Williams. But if you're a Jets fan, you got to be pretty happy you have a 3-man line of those guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. Bowles is very known to blitz, too. He blitzed a lot in Arizona. But when you have 3 guys who are that good, who could be all pros in their own right, obviously I don't think Leonard Williams will be an all-pro in his first year, but he could definitely be a Pro Bowler. Wilkerson's already at that level where most consider him the second best 3-4 defensive end behind J.J. Watt in the entire NFL. And speaking of Wilkerson, one thing that I didn't see you touch on that I'll touch on quickly is that Wilkerson has been involved in these, quote-unquote trade rumors since the draft that after they drafted Williams, there were a lot of outlets saying that the Jets are going to shop Wilkerson because he's coming up on his contract here and blah, 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 blah. They're asking for 2 first-round picks. All smoke, no fire. Don't look into it so much. The Jets, they have a plan, and they'll end up paying Wilkerson because they have a lot of veterans on the team who are not really guaranteed to stay a while. And they may end up not paying Copels. He may be the guy who's going to be out, who may have a breakout year, who they may not have to, or may not end up paying. You see guys like Cromartie. Cromartie's on the wrong side of 30. He's probably got a year or two of good years left in him before we don't know what he becomes. Cornerbacks usually start declining at 32. You look at Revis. Obviously, he's no spring chicken, but he'll probably be here for the next 3 or 4 years, depending on what happens. David Harris is coming up into the final years of his career. There were really major concerns that Harris may not have been back this year, but he's back.
Go to Buffalo and he came back.
But he's back in the fold. The offensive line is aging. Obviously, we're coming up at that point where they're going to start to look to have some youth turning over. They lost Willie Colon, but they replaced him with James Carpenter, so arguably same type of player, younger. DePerkishaw Ferguson may not be with the team in the next couple of years. He may be at that point.
Why are you getting so negative? I'm
not getting negative.
You are.
I'm just saying that a lot. I'm just relating this back to Wilkerson. A lot of people don't think that they're going to have Wilkerson. I think the trade rumors are completely, it's like someone said, look, they drafted Leonard Williams. Oh, they have so many guys on the defensive line, they're not going to be able to keep all of them. But when you look at the Giants, they kept everybody for 5 years, and they ended up winning 2 Super Bowls. So, I just think it's stupid. I'm not being negative.
If there's a player you have to keep, it's Wilkerson. That's the one you have to keep out of all. You got to get rid of Copels. Copels been, people say, he's a bust. He hasn't been a bust. He's been average. He's been fine.
My argument was that there are a lot of other veterans on this team who have been either in slight decline or are definitely coming up to the years where they may start declining, and obviously when you start declining, your salary starts declining, so it's either these contracts are going to get restructured and they'll be able to fit Wilkerson under the cap, or one of the two of these veterans will end up being cap casualties, and it won't matter in the end because Wilkerson will still be here. So I'm not worried about them paying Wilkerson. Obviously the Jets saw what their big brother did for all those years, and they realized that if you have stud players like that, you pay them and you keep them and you have them around, because guys like Wilkerson and guys like Richardson, having leaders like that on the defensive line who are so involved and so integral in the team's success, that's how you win. You get to the pass rusher and you win in the trenches. So Damian Woody, former Jets tackle, loves the pick. I love the pick. And
there's not one person who doesn't love the pick.
No, absolutely. And even we'll switch gears a little bit because we've been talking a lot about the Jets.
It's fine. I think they might have the pick of the draft. I think
they have the pick of the draft. I think they got the best defensive player, and they had him sitting at 6.
Right.
And they could have very easily fielded calls and said, we're looking to move down, because I heard a lot of rumors before the draft that the Jets were really looking at a guy like Andres Pete, who ended up going 13 to New Orleans, that they were really looking at offensive line closely. And that's more of general manager Mike McCagnon looking at the bigger picture. He understands how to build a team, and I really, really think they hit a home run in the draft. I think Leonard Williams is going to be outstanding. You look at even their picks outside the first round. They took a guy, Devin Smith, in the second round, Ohio State wide receiver. Had a very good year for the national champions. He's a great vertical threat, and them drafting Devin Smith, obviously we disagreed about this on our last podcast, but them drafting Devin Smith, giving the team a vertical option, and adding Brandon Marshall leads me to believe that they're going to give Geno at least the start of the year, because that gives him another weapon to work with. Devin Smith's comparable, obviously, would be a guy like
the one reason
Smith,
I don't want
because all Smiths do are act as vertical threats.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't want to get into the whole. We're in May. We have plenty of months to get into the whole NFL, predictions, breaking down stuff. We're still a long way away from training camp, and we haven't seen the battles play out. So I don't want to get anywhere close to the whole quarterback competition. The only reason why I said that I don't see how you could play Geno Smith even with the draft, and I agree. I mean, adding another piece like that, like Devin Smith, who I thought was another great pick, just had a phenomenal draft.
Right.
To add a piece like that, having 3 receivers, having Decker, Smith, and
another
Marshall.
linebacker in the
I mean,
third round, like
that's great. I mean,
and then I think the quietly their most underrated pick of the draft was going up and getting Bryce Petty in the 4th round. I absolutely love that pick.
That's a very interesting pick because you don't know what could happen with him. If he develops into something, then he could be your, for all we know, Bryce Petty could be playing later on this season.
Well,
back to my original point quickly, I was going to say was the reason why I thought that having Ryan Fitzpatrick play, which makes no sense, is because Geno Smith, you could either get games or flashes of brilliance, which is what keeps people still saying start him, or you can get a guy what his floor is, but what his ceiling is as well with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he can get you wins. He can beat the bad teams. He's a smart player. He'll do what he needs to do, nothing more, nothing less. Whereas Geno Smith sometimes could be an enigma. He could be a negative for your team. And I think that's because of the fact that you don't know how low his floor can go, but the fact is you don't know where his ceiling is either. It's intriguing, but it's also dangerous. And that's the reason why I think if you have a team that is pretty much set at every other position, why put in a guy quarterback who could bring you down and drag you down? So I think it's smarter to play Fitzpatrick because if he has the tools, he could utilize them and make the Jets a winning team in a very hard division, probably the best division in football right now. But I don't want to get any more into that.
NFC West, I think it's the best division.
I don't want to get any more into that. But I'm just defending myself. That's where I said that. But yes, going back to the Jets draft, especially in this tough division, what they did was just phenomenal.
But the Giants had a great draft in their own right.
Landon Collins was supposed to be, it could have been a first-round pick, best safety.
This is really, really going out on the limb. I think he's going to be an all-pro player in 3 years. I really do. I think he's the steal of the draft. I thought he was a top 20 player going in, and the only reason I felt like he fell was because
safety's no longer a need. Safety's a very weird position where it's like you once in a while you see a stud guy go very high. You could think back to Sean Taylor, rest soul, other guys who are higher. Laurent Landry went very high years back. There's some guys bounce around who come out of the blue and you take a safety because they'd be a game changer type, an Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu type player. But for the most part, you have the safety, you have maybe guard, center, tight end. There's positions where once in a while you see a stud guy go very, very high. I don't think you see them go more later. The best player, they could be an all, NCAA, whatever, first team, but they don't go that high in the draft because of their position. Whereas a left tackle, a cornerback, a receiver, those are the picks you want to see go high. Defensive end,
safety has almost become like running back. In the sense that it's like the luxury pick of on the defensive side of the ball. You need cornerbacks now because it's all about receivers. It's all about the game on the outside. Coaches look at safety now as an extension of linebacker. Coaches will draft linebackers to try to convert them into safeties.
Shaq Thompson.
And they'll draft safeties to convert them into linebackers. They look at those positions interchangeably now because you see the linebacker covering the tight end a lot more now. So, in that sense, obviously safety is becoming not extinct, but you very rarely do see safety go in the first round. But I like the Calvin Pryor pick of the Jets last year. But I look at Collins and I think, wow, Collins is a better player than Pryor was.
Played in the SEC,
Pryor went in the
pedigree, playing Alabama. I mean, you guess some Alabama players haven't panned out, but some have panned out very, very well. C.J. Mosley in the Ravens or Julio Jones. They're on different positions, but still, not all Alabama players don't pan out. You trust Nick Saban, you trust their program. They have the most drafted players in the recent memory for a reason. So I love the Giants pick. You got to replace a guy like Antrell Roll.
I think they got 2 first-rounders.
Sure.
And then, obviously they took Collins with the first pick in the second round, so arguably, he's right there. And a lot of great value these days is found in the second round. That's why Bill Belichick always seems to trade down. That's why Ozzie Newsome and the Ravens always seems to trade down because they understand the draft process.
Right.
But you look at the Giants' first 3 draft picks, and you could put those 3 against any other, top 3 from any other team, and I think that they would win out. I really do. Look at the defensive end that they drafted in the 3rd round from UCLA, whose name I can't pronounce.
Yeah, no one can pronounce it. And the last time they took a 3rd round player, defensive end with the pick, I think it was pick 74, was Justin Tuck. So
obviously
Justin Tuck turned out.
Yes,
little history on that.
And guess who they're comparing that pick to.
Yeah.
Like player wise, and obviously it just seems like a natural comparison.
Yeah,
both in terms of player profile and how the Giants drafted Tom.
Yeah, and you made a good point saying the Giants took essentially 2 first-rounders with their first 2 picks, at least value-wise, and another guy they were looking at and were rumored to almost take in the 6th and 7th round, although he had top 15 talent and was supposed to projected to go in the top 15, was Lyle Collins, which is one of the most interesting stories right now in the NFL offseason. Was a guy who, I guess, had a girlfriend who was pregnant, and she was killed. She was, gunned down, and I believe it was in Baton Rouge, and he went to LSU. And so he was not a suspect at all, but he was being questioned for whatever reason, just to see what happened. Was invited to the draft in Chicago and flew down, on his own terms, on the terms of his agent or whoever, to go and meet with the police in Baton Rouge. And they talked to him. And, his agent himself called every single NFL team, all 32 teams, tried to clear his name, said he wasn't, didn't do it. And the cops were at least on his side, saying he's not a suspect at all. But in this day and age of the NFL, with all the stuff happening with Hernandez and you name it, Ray Rice, all the different issues the NFL has, you can't attach yourself to a player that's in some sort of legal issue involved in it, in one way or the other. And it turns out he took the DNA test, not the father of the child. He has plenty of alibis, and they tracked his phone down. He was apparently at the Pelicans. A basketball game, the last game, the playoff game, when this all happened. So he was there with his family, so they knew he was there. They tracked his cell phone. He had alibis, like I said. Then the cops they still stand by that. And eventually his name was cleared, and teams understood that. And he recently was, the Bills trying to go and sign him. Rex Rhino flew down to meet with him for dinner. And he eventually signed with the Dallas Cowboys. You can't say no to Jerry Jones flying in with his private jet. And joining one that is probably the best offensive line in all football now.
The Cowboys did really, really good.
Yeah, and then another team got very good. Really good. Byron Jones, another good pick from them. So they had a good draft.
Byron Jones reminds me a lot of Jimmy Smith with the Ravens a couple years ago. He was a big, tall, raw cornerback coming out of Colorado, and he didn't really project to be like a standout number 1 corner, but he's got all the intangibles to play like the position, and I think Jones profiles as that same kind of player. They needed a defensive end / pass rushing linebacker to replace DeMarcus Ware because they didn't have that presence last year. And they went out and they got Randy Gregory, who should have been a top 10 pick.
Yeah. So talk about value with that team. I mean, adding more pieces.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Gregory had his character concerns, but I feel like the marijuana issue, it's,
well, his might be deeply rooted in other. He said he had anxiety issues, and who knows if he actually has a disorder. I don't know the history. I think the teams know that. We don't. The public does not know that. But
watch Gregory play, and the talent is there. And I mean, if you want to slide in the first round, if he slid to the 20s, obviously I would understand like a Shane Ray. But at some point, talent trumps that, and I think a lot of teams are going to look really dumb in hindsight that they passed on him. And I mean, you could argue Jerry Jones being, whatever, maybe he's got too much control, maybe he doesn't understand necessarily how to build a team, but you watch in the last couple of years, getting Lyle Collins, who was a top 30, 40 prospect, one of maybe the 3rd best offensive tackle on the board, goes out and gets him, goes out and gets Gregory. They're getting Sean Lee back, and then they're adding a cornerback, and maybe if Morris Claiborne ever comes back around, you look at that defense, all of a sudden, it doesn't look so bad.
Right.
It doesn't look so bad. Maybe the defensive line emerges, and their offense was already spectacular last year. So
sure, and I'm jealous. I'm jealous of them. I mean, the Giants I know were linked.
They slowly built themselves a nice.
Odell Beckham was a friend and teammate of Lyle Collins. He was telling the Giants, go and take him, and the Giants were thinking about taking him 6th, 7th round. The Cowboys apparently almost took him in the 4th round. Lyle Collins, from what I've read. But, again, teams are just afraid to jump on a guy with any issues, any character concerns, or red flag, and the Giants are, the team at the top of that list who just do not touch a guy with anything. Even though Lyle Collins, has no red flags or character issues, it was an unfortunate situation where he dated a girl who happened to be murdered. He didn't do it, not the hands of him. So it just, that could have happened, I guess, literally to anyone. So it's not like he has any background concerns besides that. People, again, made it clear that he is not a bad kid, just was in a bad situation. And the Cowboys lucked out with a great player like that, who probably was the biggest undrafted free agent signing, and I at least can remember. I know you want to talk about a pick that you liked and a pick you didn't like in the draft. I can start with that. What pick did you think was the best pick in terms of value, or just someone you like a lot going forward?
I thought I hate this because they're so good at this. I thought the Patriots getting Malcolm Brown at 32 with the final pick in the first round was unbelievable. And I thought the back-to-back with them getting Brown and then the Giants getting Collins were the two best picks in the draft. Because they lost Vince Wilfork. They took Dominic Easley last year. So, I don't know if he profiles as a 4-3 defensive end or if they're going to slowly try to switch back to a 3-4 and use Brown as like a nose tackle kind of player. But it's just Bill Belichick being Bill Belichick. He's like, oh, here, look, Malcolm Brown, top 25 player, and he's there for me at 32 because all these teams don't know what they're doing. Like, look at the Colts. The Colts took Philip Dorsett. Why? They signed Andre Johnson. They got T.Y. Hilton. They took Donta Moncrief in the second round a couple of years ago. Why? Why do they have Colby Fleener? They have Dwayne Allen. Go get another couple of pass-catching running backs for Andrew Luck to utilize. Why take another wide receiver? That's not a position in need. You don't win like that. You've just been blown out 2 straight years by the Patriots in the playoffs because all they did was run the ball down the throat.
Right.
It wasn't even Brady beating them. Well, Garrett Blount has had 250-yard, multi-touchdown games in the last 2 years. Obviously, your top position of need is defensive tackle. And this is why I feel like some teams, they just don't get it. They go through all these months of evaluation and they stick by the draft process. They stick strictly by their draft boards. And it's obviously where your position of need is. Like for the Colts, obviously they can get by with maybe drafting a receiver in the middle rounds and hoping he pans out like a Mike Wallace did. And then all of a sudden they take a guy who's the 8th best receiver in the draft with the 26th pick in the first round, and all of a sudden the top defensive tackle in the draft, or one of the 3 or 4 best defensive tackles, projected to go high, maybe as high as Kansas City, maybe as high as even New Orleans, sitting you right in the face, and you pass on him for a position that you have absolutely no need for. So it was stupid, and I obviously used my best and worst to kind of intertwine there because I thought it was a good fit. So at the end of the day, you look at Houston, they took a guy like Jalen Strong in the 3rd round. Jalen Strong, I think, is going to be better than Philip Dorsett. I'll go on record as saying that right now. I love Jalen Strong, and I thought he could have easily been taken the
Green Beckham as well.
Final. Yeah. And absolutely, there you go, boom. Dorial Green Beckham to Tennessee in the 2nd round. I thought Tennessee really didn't nail the draft too, but that's another discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But the Colts took a guy who may not even profile to be better than receivers who were taken after him over a desperate position of need. They desperately need a nose tackle, defensive tackle kind of player for that defense because they run a 3-4. But they necessarily still don't have the personnel to run a 3-4. And, that's... If they expect to get past the Patriots, the Steelers of the world, even the Broncos are still going to be fine this year. The Chargers, you don't know. The Chiefs, you don't know. If you expect to get by those teams in the playoffs, you're going to need to stop the run. And they did absolutely nothing in the offseason that makes me believe they can stop the run going into next year. So those are my best and worst picks from the draft. The first round.
Yeah, I'll stay on the bad picks, and it's very similar to what you pick with the receiver, or actually lack thereof, and that's the Cleveland Browns. I thought had 2 picks in the first round and needed to get an offensive stud. You had a guy like Josh Gordon, who was probably top 2 receiver in the NFL. He's gone now due to suspension. You have their quarterback Johnny Manziel in and out of rehab. You're unsure of his future. You have no real offensive threat, offensive star. And I thought with the 2 picks, and I believe we mocked one of their picks of them taking a receiver, and they used neither for a receiver. And they took an O lineman and a D lineman, I think, with both their picks.
They took Danny Shelton and they took Cameron Irvin.
Who I like both players. The players themselves are fine.
Right.
I just don't think it's
a Steelers-esque kind of picks.
Yes, and I just don't think that it was necessary for them to take 2 guys in the trenches when you need an offensive star. They're not going to move the ball. They're not going to move the ball.
Taking like a Devontae Parker at where they pick 11 or they pick 12.
Yes,
they would have been better off taking like a Devontae Parker and like maybe Danny Shelton would have fell. I think he would have fell. But
yeah,
there were a lot of concerns with Danny Shelton regarding like his stamina. He didn't run so well in the
only a 2-down player.
Right, only a 2-down player. A lot of concerns there, but they could have very easily taken Devontae Parker and Cameron Irvin and still gotten a defensive tackle somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd round. So
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing there for a team that needs, someone on the offensive side of the ball to root for. You're not sure what your quarterback situation is. Running back situation is not very good. Receivers, I know they signed Hartline, I think, and someone else Dwayne Bowe, I believe.
Yes.
But Dwayne Bowe is not anything special. He's very hot and cold. Brian Hartline is not a 1. I'm not sure if he's even a 2. So you don't really have a top offensive threat at all, and I thought that's just a big miss there. Best picks, I raved about Leonard Williams before. I think Leonard Williams is the best player in this draft. Jets got him, so that was great for the hometown team. Other picks in the first one who I really do like a lot. I like both running backs. I know people say Big Ten running backs don't translate. They don't really, especially guys like Wisconsin who are behind, those 300-pound monsters. They had arguably the best offensive line of football, so Melvin Gordon had it easy. But I think Melvin Gordon for the Chargers, they kept Phil Rivers. I think it's going to be a great all-around back for them. Todd Gurley went 10 for a reason, even with, devastating ACL injury. Or not, it's not an injury that ends your career like it used to. The technology and the medical the advancements we made are so much better. And he went top 10, even missing most of the season. The guy was dominant in the SEC. He could do it all. I think he's the best prospect since Peterson, so he's going to be awesome.
I like what the
two
Rams
studs.
did.
Yeah,
how I like Foles. I think Foles is a very solid quarterback. They have a great running back in Trey Mason, but they realize that in order to win that division, you got to pound the ball. That's how Seattle's gotten there the last couple of years. Right. And now Lynch is on the decline. They went and they got Jimmy Graham, so they expanded their offense a little bit. But the Rams understand that the only way you win that division is if you pound the ball and you get to the quarterback. And as of right now, when you look at Mason and Gurley in the fold,
I want to say this. I think Todd Gurley...
They may surpass the Seahawks this year as the best running team in the division.
Todd Gurley,
obviously, we know how great their defensive line is. It's filled with first-round picks literally at every position.
Yes, that's a good point. And I think Todd Gurley, right now if I ask you, Joe, who is the top running back in the NFL, who would you say?
The top running back?
Number 1 running back in the NFL.
That's a good question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you line up and ask 10 people, how many answers do you think you get?
I mean, I still think McCoy and Charles, and they're the top guys. And if Peterson, I still think Peterson.
You just named 3. Exactly. You just named 3 different running backs. Peterson, we're not sure if he didn't play half of last year.
Right.
McCoy's changing teams. Jamal Charles, fine, does have some injuries here and there. Not always the most durable. You just gave me 3 different answers yourself. We line up and ask 10 people, we might get 5, 6, 7, 8 answers. And that's why I think the problem in the NFL is there's no clear-cut number 1 running back. Some people might say Marshawn Lynch. Some people could say Matt Forte.
I
there's answers.
Completely forgot about Forte.
There's answers all over the board. That's the crazy part. I think Todd Gurley can come in the NFL and be the clear-cut best running back in a number of years. That's how good I think Todd Gurley is, and I think they got someone who is, just an outstanding overall great running back who dominated the SEC and had an unfortunate injury. If he didn't have a bad injury, he could have been, right at the Heisman podium too, with along, Melvin Gordon, Mariota, and Winston and whoever else. So I think that he could be a guy, like you said yourself, number 1 picks on their offensive line. They have receivers. They have a quarterback now in a division where the tide's slowly changing. The 49ers on the decline. The Seahawks, will see what else they have left. They did get a big-time tight end in Jimmy Graham, so we'll see. But the future is bright for St. Louis Rams. I think it's a great pick by them. I still also like Melvin Gordon. Do not think he'll be a Ron Dane-type bust, a Monty Ball-type bust like other Wisconsin running backs or Big Ten running backs. So I like both of them, but I think Todd Gurley has a real chance to be one of the best players in the NFL. So I like that pick a lot. And I gave you my worst pick. My worst pick's the joint picks of the Cleveland Browns not getting a top end receiver or offensive talent in some positions. So those are our NFL draft picks. Anything else that day as well? There was our Rangers hockey that day, earlier in that day.
That's right.
And they did win that game.
Yeah, they won game 2.
Do you want to get into NHL? You want to get into? Oh, there's also NBA playoffs that day too.
I wanted to. We'll close with the Rangers. We'll close with our Rangers predictions. I just wanted to touch on the NBA playoffs quickly because we were really criticizing how bad they were in the first round, and they were bad. But at the same time, I feel like we all knew that once it got down to the Elite Eight, the second round, I feel like everybody knew that this was going to be the best round, just because of the different matchups, the variety, the diversity in the matchups, and it's pretty much lived up to the hype so far. You look at Golden State, currently actually wearing my Steph Curry jersey outside, even though they lost Game 3 last night. Every single lower-seeded team, as of right now, is up 2-1 in their respective series, which is something you really don't see in the NBA these days because it's been, believe it or not, I mean, don't get me wrong, obviously every sport wants parity, but when you look at the NBA, The last time that a non-top, the finals featured a series that did not have a top 2 seed from either conference, pretty long ago. I don't even know this the actual year off the top of my head, but you can go back and it's been a very, very long time. So usually one of the top 4 teams always gets there. And for the first time in a long time, because this year saw so much parity and so many different teams like the Hawks and the Warriors and the Rockets really emerge, we're looking at a situation here where we could see a 3-5 and a 3-5 matchup in both conference finals. Memphis currently up 2-1. The Clippers, the 3 seed in the West, currently up 2-1 over the 2-seeded Rockets. The Wizards, even without John Wall, won Game 3 last night against the Hawks. They're up 2-1 against the best team in the East. And the final series, which is the Bulls and the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers lost Kevin Love. Now all of a sudden the Bulls, after their buzzer-beating Game 3 win, thanks to Derrick Rose, they're up 2-1 too. The Bulls were the 3 seed, the Cavs obviously the 2. So by the time the series, every series is over, we're probably going to come to a situation where one of the 2 higher seeds are going to come back and win the series. I still like Golden State. I predicted that we were going to get a rematch of last year's first round Clippers-Warriors series in the conference finals, and I'm sticking by that. I think those were the 2 best teams in the West, along with the Spurs, and it just so happens that the Clippers and the Spurs ended up playing in the first round to cancel each other out. In the East, the Kevin Love injury is huge for Cleveland, and it gives the Bulls an opportunity to get back into the thick of things. So I think we're going to end up seeing Atlanta's. If John Wall, obviously, I don't think with the fractures in his wrist and his hand, I don't think we're going to see him back at any time in the series. So I feel like the Hawks they're going to end up holding suit, even if the series does go 7 games. So I see the Hawks getting through, and I see Chicago getting through too. And originally my finals pick I was with you. I was with Warriors Cavaliers all the way, but the Kevin Love injury really threw a monkey wrench into the current situation. So I feel like the Bulls, because of the way they play defensively, because they're a balanced team, because they've gotten guys like Gasol now who have been there before, they set up pretty well. And not that I'm looking to amend my finals prediction, but those are my 4 picks going through to the next round. Obviously, we're going to see 1 or 2 upsets because that's the way right now it seems to be trending. So you're a big basketball guy, obviously, Mr. Serious.
Yeah, it might work for them.
Yeah. Do you agree with my assessment?
The one interesting thing about all these games is that you look at the Cavs missing Kevin Love, and they did miss J.R. Smith the first 2 games. The Bulls, Pau Gasol's hurt and we missed the game tonight. You have the Grizzlies who are dealing with Mike Conley's facial fracture, who just came back and had a great game. And that game, last game versus the Warriors, we known as the Conley, the face mask game. He was awesome in that. The Clippers have Chris Paul's hamstring injury, who hasn't been playing, and Austin Rivers, Doc Rivers' son, is taking over. The only team not really injured are the Golden State Warriors, and I think that's a very, very key thing for this whole. All the teams left because they're a team that has a good bench. They have the league's MVP. They have another top guy in Klay Thompson, who will be he'll be in the MVP candidacy as well for the remainder of his career. I think they're the team to beat no matter what. Breaking down each series game by game. Watch the Bulls Cavs game the other night. LeBron goes in the court, misses the layup. I believe Taj Gibson rebounded. They has a couple seconds left. Derrick Rose gets it, chucks up the 3, wins the game. And they play the game without Pau Gasol as well. In the combo of Noah and Taj Gibson did a great job versus LeBron. And LeBron's saying a lot of weird things. He's very back and forth. He's saying, Noah's being nasty and trash talking. So what? LeBron, you got to sack up. You have to stop being the nice guy. Again, it comes back to the narrative that LeBron does not understand how to be the villain, how to be the tough guy to tell the team what to do and say, screw you, I'm the best player in the game, I'm going to do this. He just doesn't have that drive, and I don't get why. I think that's going to come back and haunt him. His inability to take over games and want to be the best player and have that drive is his number one weakness, and it's apparent right now. And that's the reason why the Bulls are in this series right now. It's 49-45 at halftime. So the Bulls are still in this game, in this series. They win this, they're in a lot of trouble with the Cavs. So we'll see what happens with that. I think I can't bet against the best player in the NBA, so I say the Cavs still win the series. I think losing Pau hurts because Pau was very, very good this year, despite how bad he is defensively. But he was a double-double machine. I think led the league in double-doubles this year. But so I'm still going to stick with the Cavaliers just because, Kevin Love did have a better season than most people let on. Everyone thought he was a bum because of all the issues he had with LeBron. And again, the childish drama they had. But Kevin Love was a very good player. So I'm not going to bet against him. I think the return of J.R. Smith is going to help him. And Amon Shumpert's been playing great as well. And you still have a guy named Kyrie Irving who is emerging as one of the top point guards in the league. That being said, on the Chicago side of things, Derrick Rose has been phenomenal. Every Bulls fan should be very happy about his return to prominence. So that it's a great series. Quickly on the Clippers Rockets, I think that Chris Paul, if his injury's not as serious and he comes back, it's going to be series over. Clippers are just a better team. They're a deeper team. They're coached by Doc Rivers, who is a better coach than Kevin McHale and one of the best coaches in the game. They're due, and they advanced. Their biggest test was the Spurs. They beat the Spurs in 7 games on the second tremendous game. I think their talent alone, having a guy like Blake Griffin, who's been the best player, bar none, in the playoffs right now, with a healthy Chris Paul, is going to be very hard to beat. That being said, if Paul doesn't come back, it's basically the Golden State Warriors, time to dominate the West and whoever they play in the East. The Grizzlies, though, are a very interesting matchup. They're a half-court team. The Warriors are a very run-and-gun, fast-paced, transition type team. But if Conley, his face injury doesn't bother him, having, the two best combo, big men, the 4-5 and Zebo and Gasol with Conley, running the show, and you have a guy like Tony Allen, who's the best perimeter defender in the game. Very, very good team. We'll see if there's any flare-ups with his injury, if his facial swelling it prohibits him from doing anything. But as we saw from the last game, I doubt it. If the Splash Brothers are on, they're hitting their threes. They're very hard to stop. So we'll break down that series next round. We see how this is going. We'll podcast again sometime later next week to see how some of these things break down over the weekend. Which will be fun, which is what we needed. We needed the first round of the NBA playoffs. As you heard in the podcast, we bashed the NBA playoffs and we said how great the NHL playoffs have been, and the NHL playoffs have still been great, and that's never going to change. But the NBA playoffs have been a bit of a letdown in the first round. But the second round, we're getting everything we could ask for and more. I guess outside of that Spurs Clippers series in the first round, which is very, very good. Moving on quickly, because I know Joe has to be out of here for Mother's Day. We'll end with the Rangers Caps today. Because they are playing later on today, Game 6, what it comes down to was last game was the Rangers. Well, Game 4 was the biggest game of the Rangers this season because they won that game. Going home to Game 5, they go up 3-2, and the series looks like it's in their favor. They lose Game 4. Game 5, down 3-1. I thought the series was all she wrote. I thought it was over with. It was my birthday. That day, the day before my birthday, you can call me what you want. You could say fair weather. I was no longer invested. I emotionally took myself out of the series, and I did it for my own well-being. I did it so I can enjoy my life, my birthday, and move on, and just not think about what could have been for the 2015 Rangers team. And they win in dramatic fashion in Game 5, and now it's a 3-2 series. And if they win today is now the biggest game of the Rangers series because they win today. I think the narrative changes from the Rangers hanging on and the Caps just need to win one of 3 to now the Caps cannot put their foot on the throat of the Rangers and the Rangers' talent, and they basically outplayed the Caps this whole series besides the fact they can't convert on goals is now showing, is now apparent. And like I said, the narrative changes to now the Rangers have momentum, they have control of the series, they're going home for Game 7 Madison Square Garden, and the Caps stand no chance. That's I think what happens.
When you look at hockey, I think it's beautiful in the sense that it's the one sport where I feel like a lot of things tend to even out given time. And when you look at the factors going into tonight's game, the Rangers were the best road team all season. That's why they won the President's Trophy. But they excelled on the road, and they were better on the road than they were at home. Number 2, they've outplayed the Caps this series. Has it been by much? No. I would say in terms of possession, in terms of scoring.
What's funky about that is you can say they outplayed them. The fact of the matter is they can't score. Right, so you can say they outplayed them all they want. The fact if you don't score, how much does outplaying them really matter?
Right.
It matters 0.
I wouldn't say that they've been the better team, but I do say that when you use the eye test to watch the games, the Rangers have definitely outplayed them. I would say 60 to 40% of the time in the games.
In certain aspects, I mean the Rangers aren't winning. They're not winning the faceoffs from the dot. They're not winning that. The goalies are playing. They're the 2 best goalies right now in the playoffs. There's no debating that.
No doubt about that. And they've turned the series into a series what hockey looked like before the lockout. That's what they've essentially done. It's been a one-goal game every single game. Now, when you look at this, the two sides of the spectrum say, like, okay, it's the Capitals' time. It's time for Ovechkin to get by the second round and to actually challenge for the Stanley Cup. So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the Rangers are talented. They won the President's Trophy. They've had bad puck luck in this series, and they've been the best team on the road, and they lost the first 2 games on the road. So it's interesting because I felt like the Rangers were going to win the series in 6 games, and obviously they're going to have to try to push this to 7 games.
I wrote for our podcast. I said Rangers in 6.
Right. When you look at this, I think there are a lot of factors going for each team in this series, and to me, this is the game that the Capitals have to win because I feel like if the series gets to Game 7 at the Garden, it's going to be a lot. And if there's one thing that I will say Ovechkin is, he's the second best player in the world, third best player in the world, what have you. He's the best pure goal scorer in the world. He can score from anywhere on the ice, and that's the ultimate compliment I can give him. But I think that they do play very emotionally, and they've played a lot more structured under Barry Trotz this year, and that's why they've gotten to this point. And they've blocked the hell out of every single shot, and that's how they've stayed in this series. But when you look at the type of player like Ovechkin, he does play with his emotions on his sleeve. And if we've seen one thing in hockey, it's that series can change on a dime. We saw it last year with San Jose and LA, and we saw it last year with New York and Pittsburgh. The Rangers were down to 3-1 at Pittsburgh in this very same spot. The only difference is that the Rangers did not have the luxury of Game 5 at the Garden. They had to win Game 5 in Pittsburgh. But when you look at this, going down 3-1 plays out the same way, whether you have the home game at Game 5 or Game 6. And it so happens that the Capitals have an opportunity to close out Game 6 at home now. The Rangers had Game 6 in the Garden last year, being the only difference here. I think if the Capitals don't win here, I do not like their chances in Game 6.
I agree with you on that.
Because you look at his history, you look at all these series that in recent years where this is another thing that I wanted to bring up quick to close out my point. Every single Stanley Cup winner since 2011 has had to come from behind in a series to win on their road to the Stanley Cup.
It's a nugget.
The Bruins went down. They lost their very first 2 games of the 2011 playoffs in Montreal. Not in Montreal, in Boston. And they had to come back and win the next 2 in Montreal. And in the Stanley Cup final, it went down 2-0, and then they went down 3-2 again. And before they went back, and they finally won a Game 7 in Vancouver. In 2012, the Kings, well, actually, I'm sorry, it's happened 3 of the last 4 years. The Kings rolled through the 2012 playoffs. We got a very odd playoff that year. But 2013, the Blackhawks, who are definitely the best team in the shortened season, they went down 3-1 to Detroit. A lot of people forget that.
Wow.
A lot of people forget that.
Including me.
And then
I do remember the Boston series, though.
Yes, you remember the Boston series. They also went down 2-1 that series. And you look at last year with the Kings, they went down 3-0 to San Jose. Then they went down 3-2 to Anaheim. So it is a situation that a lot of teams in recent years have persevered through. So when you look at the Rangers, you could say, oh, they're due. They went down 3-1 last year. They've been in this spot before. But at the same time, you could look at Washington and say they're honestly due. The type of player, the stature of Ovechkin, to have never been past the second round before, it's tough. But when I'm looking at history, eventually one of these, if the Rangers don't do it tonight, I think the series is over. But I'm going to lean on the other side of the history. I think the Rangers are going to break through a little bit, and I think they're going to score 3 or 4 goals tonight. Because
they need to.
They're just due to. And like I said at the very top, to tie this all back together, hockey is the kind of game where everything eventually ends up balancing out. So when you look at the Rangers, they've struggled to score all series, but I think it's basically been more a little bit due to bad puck luck and Holtby being excellent. I'm going to project a 3-1 win tonight.
You are?
Yes, I am.
So then you're essentially picking the Rangers to win the series then?
Yes.
So you're picking a 3-1 win tonight.
Even when they went down 3-1, I didn't really feel like that they were out of the series.
I think a lot of people agree with you because they were not truly outplayed.
Right.
That's the difference. But I don't think just because again you're not being outplayed it doesn't matter in hockey. Hockey, that's what makes hockey the great sport. If you're outplayed in football, you lose. You're outplayed in basketball, you lose. You're outplayed in baseball, a pitch, you got hit, you usually lose. Hockey, you could be outplayed. You know what? you don't have any puck luck. You have a goalie who's a stud and who's standing on his head. You could actually not win those games. I don't know if I could pick the Rangers tonight. I'm still afraid of their goal scoring ability. I still think that they're going to be in a very tight, 0-0, 1-1 game. And I just feel like if it's going to be one of those late third period games or overtime games where it's a tie game, I just don't trust them. I feel like I can't see, Lightning might not strike twice, and then might get a late goal and then another goal in the overtime. I feel like if there's going to be anyone's going to have a puck luck, it's going to be the home team, it's going to be the Caps. They're going to get, a deflection, a redirect. They're going to have a sloppy rebound and just and win it Game 6 in Washington today and close the Rangers series season's over, which will be very interesting to see the offseason because, this is a team that was supposed to, be destined for greater things. At minimum, I think you had to at least reach the Stanley Cup Finals again. Just because I think it's a better team overall than it was last year when last year was kind of unexpected. So I am not as confident as you. That being said, I will say if they do win tonight, I can't see how the Caps could mentally overcome this and win Game 7 in New York. I feel like because it'll just be one of those things where Rangers, oh my God, they did it last year, they're going to do it again. They're home now, they have momentum. It affects you. It's almost like hockey's a weird way. It almost like it's like a golf match where you have a bad shot, you keep playing like that. Hockey's, I think, is very similar to that. You see a lot of series come back from 3-1 to be like this.
Right.
So I think that if they win tonight, I am on the same page as you. They will win Game 7. And then from there, we'll see if they have to play either Montreal or Tampa, which is in a very similar series as the Rangers.
Yes.
And
I think if Tampa loses Game 6, they're going to lose Game 7.
I'm afraid of Tampa, and I'm also afraid of a couple teams out west too. But we'll get to that later. Obviously, Joe, so right around here, we're going to finish on this. So your prediction tonight: Rangers win 3-1, and then so
they're due for a game where they break out a little bit, and we're due for one game where it's not a one-goal game.
And I don't think the Rangers. I don't think they'll break out of this non-scoring slump. It's been how many games they played? 5 games versus Pittsburgh, and they've played 5 games versus the Caps already. And there hasn't been scoring in any of those games for the Rangers. So I don't see why now tonight will be the difference. I think there's just a real problem, a real team-wide problem. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the absence of Zook in the series. I don't know if it's just a playoff. The other teams just playing up to their level. I don't know why they can't score. They're not. I don't think it's going to change tonight, especially in the Caps home crowd. They have 3 chances to win 1 game, and I think, unfortunately, the Rangers' luck ends tonight, another close game that they can't squeeze out.
All right.
I'm sorry to say it. But anyway, there's our podcast. We'll send this. I'm sending this one over to Joe. We'll put up sometime tonight or tomorrow. We'll recap everything that's gone on in the first 10 days of May. It's been crazy. Next podcast, we'll recap the NHL playoffs, the ending of these couple series, the NBA playoffs, these series. We'll preview the next series. We'll get more Preakness stuff from Joe's end. I'm sure I'll write a great article that we'll promote. We can read about that. We'll get some more baseball stuff, see the Yankees keep this up, and then see if the Mets somehow turn things around. I'm sure there'll be NFL news. We've had a lot of stuff to deal with in May, so I don't see why the train will stop rolling now. But, for Joe and Eddie, I'll send this podcast over to him. We'll get this up. You guys can listen to enjoy it. Tweeted us, DNS podcast. DNS underscore podcast? Yeah, DNS underscore podcast. Joe is at Joe underscore Calabrese92. I'm at Edward L. Murph. You can tweet at us. Any questions you want us, or anything you want us to cover, we will. So, again, thanks for listening. And we're trying to get better, so we appreciate everyone who interacts with us. Any final words?
Go Rangers.
I'm with you. Let's go Rangers, too, and we'll see you soon.